It's a secret to no one that I absolutely love Guilty Gear Xrd. After all, it was my favorite game in 2014. I followed this franchise since the first one for the original PlayStation, and I adore every single entry in the series. Well, Guilty Gear Isuka was a fucking disaster, but at least the beat 'em up mode was kinda okay. Only okay, I guess. And talking about that, there is also Judgment for the PlayStation Portable, and that one was mediocre. But Dust Strikers for the Nintendo DS was not so cool. And I guess I can't forget about that Patins Lodge thing, right? And then there is Guilty Gear 2 and, well, never mind. Anyway, when it comes to the main entries in the series, all the games are godlike. It's the kind of thing that otaku citizens like to call Kamige! 1 year after Xrd Sign, the sequel was released for arcades in Japan, and then we got this updated version for consoles. So, let's see if Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator has what it takes to be considered a true sequel. Before starting talking about the new stuff, let me start with what didn't change. The soundtrack is pretty much the same, except for a few new tracks for the new characters and story mode. There are no remixes or new arrangements for the old songs, but at least the new ones are pretty awesome, like you would expect. Most of the presentation also looks the same as the last game, like the announcements, menus, selection screens, illustrations, etc. At least all of that still works pretty fine and fits really well in the game. And now for the new stuff. We got 2 new fighters from the arcade version. Johnny, who is a returning character from Guilty Gear X2, and he also made a cameo in the story mode from the previous game. The second new fighter is Jacko Valentine, a completely new character who works for Dead Man. The second edition of the arcade version also included a new character, Kurodoberry-Jan, who also returned from Guilty Gear X2. And finally, in the console version, we got 2 new characters, Raven and Kun Heihyo. Raven's last appearance was in Guilty Gear 2, but he looks and acts completely different from that game. And since Guilty Gear 2 wasn't a fighting game, his design and moveset are completely new, so this means he's basically a new character. Kun Heihyo is the first Korean character in the series, and is also a huge reference to Total Recall, because even though he looks like this imposing elderly master macho man, he is actually a very fragile and cute girl in the inside. Literally. You can unlock Raven for free by playing the game normally, but if you want to play as him right away, you can also pay for a DLC to unlock him right from the start. However, you can only get Kun Heihyo if you buy her DLC. When it comes to gameplay, Johnny and Jan play very similar to how they did back in Guilty Gear X2, with just a few changes to their normal attacks and a new overdrive move for each of them. Johnny's new overdrive move can give him more of those coins that he throws at the opponent to make his Mystifier much stronger. On the other hand, Jan's new overdrive move only deals a lot of damage when used at the right timing. And now let me talk about the newcomers. Jacko is a gimmick character. Her specialty is to set tiny houses, from which little soldiers come out and attack her opponent automatically. There are 3 types of soldiers, and they get stronger with time. You can also use special commands to make them faster or to make them explode, which can deal a lot of damage, but it can also hit Jacko herself. Different from most characters of the same type, Jacko has many powerful melee attacks. but each one uses a bit of rotation gauge. Raven is a very interesting character. He is a middle range attacker, but he also got some tricky moves, like this grab move that catches the opponent when there is a bit of distance between the two, and this projectile that stays still for a while, but can still cause damage if you get close enough. But the most unique aspect of this character has to be his masochistic dance, which fills the masochistic gauge. And when Raven gets hit during his dance, his gauge fills even more. You can actually recover from all the damage you get during this dance little by little. But if you get hit right after the dance ends, you keep all the damage and the healing process stops immediately. And much like any counter move, this dance is also vulnerable to grab attacks. And for last, Kunhei-hyo. She is a very straightforward fighter. It's not for nothing that her robot looks a lot like Gouken from Street Fighter 4, because she is basically the Shoto clone of the Guilty Gear series. She has a Hadouken, a Shoryuken, and even a Tatsumaki Senpukya. She also has very short combos, just like most Street Fighter games. But her damage output is absurd, being really close to the likes of Potenkin. And she's also pretty fast, almost as fast as Sol Badguy. So yes, she's pretty broken. Dizzy will also become playable through DLC, but as of now, there is no information about her playstyle or about when she will be released. On the other hand, it doesn't seem like the returning characters have changed much, if any at all. They probably just got rebalanced. There are few changes to the basic mechanics. Now every character has a charge attack, by pressing triangle and circle at the same time. This feels a lot like the focus system from Street Fighter 4. Other than that, some fighters are able to use the burst gauge to execute overdrive super moves. But you will need to take a look at the command list in order to see who can and cannot do that. There is also a new system to change the difficulty level of arcade mode depending on how good you are. This means that if you do really well during a match, the game will suddenly jump in difficulty, and it can get much harder right at the second match. But it also means that if you keep losing, it will get really easy, even if it's the last stage of arcade mode, so you will feel like a noob, and the only one to blame is yourself, because you suck. Anyway, there is no real final boss this time around, so the arcade mode is already ridiculously easy, even without this new feature. And talking about noobs, now there are two play modes: Technical mode, which plays just like the normal game, and Stylish mode, or as I like to call, Noob mode, where you just need to press one button, and you will look just like those grown-ups who actually know how to play this game. The only major flaw that this game had was the story mode. It's not because the story is bad or anything, it was just very incomplete. In fact, it was missing more than half of the story at launch. But thankfully, the new patch 1.01 fixed that problem, giving a really satisfactory conclusion to this current arc of the story. And I believe the US version will already have a complete story mode at launch. Hopefully. It seems like the online gameplay is really good. There is even this room that looks like a real arcade house. You can walk around, talk with people, and go fishing for new clothes and faces, just like I remember when I used it to go to those places. Unfortunately, this mode has a huge problem. It seems that currently I'm the only geek who got this game outside Japan. Because, just take a look at those lobbies. They are completely empty. And with my shitty internet connection, there is no way I can play a decent match with someone living in Japan. See? Yep, that sure makes me feel awful about myself. Especially because I won. Yeah, the thing is, I'm actually used to play games with a lot of lag. I'm so sorry, Blue Blood Caesar. You are the true champion for playing this match with me until the end. But now you will never want to play with me ever again. Because no one wants to play freaking Guilty Gear in slowdown. In conclusion, this game feels a bit like an expansion rather than a sequel, But there is still enough new content to justify this purchase. 6,200 yens is not that expensive for a new game. It is still way cheaper than the sequel to Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax, which was 7,500 yens. And that game had much less new content than this new Guilty Gear, by the way. So yeah, if you love fighting games, you will probably find yourself enjoying this game, even if you are not a huge fan of anime, manga, and the likes. And that's because Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator has very complex and solid mechanics. Will this be my game of the year in 2016? I don't think so. Even though I'm a huge fanboy of this franchise, I must admit that the sequel didn't have the same impact as the previous one. But Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator is still a pretty damn awesome game, which is why I recommend it to anyone. And that's it for this review. But if you still have any questions about Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator, just leave a comment. Thank you for watching. Bye!